Whew. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. And if you're new, welcome. My name is Adelina and I make videos about living in this tiny house on wheels and living a more intentional life. It's storming out there. I just got soaked coming in from the van because it's hail storming out there. So if you hear lots of noise in the background, if you hear thunder, that's what's going on. So I apologize for my disheveled look, but I just got soaked. And poor Sophie is really not very happy about the whole process. So anyways, today I want to talk about choosing a mover and sort of the considerations around moving. Now, this is going to be part one of this topic, because after my move, I'm obviously going to be discussing how it all went, what the learnings were, you know, basically what went right and what went wrong. Hopefully not a whole lot. So if that's of interest, stay watching. So I'm a big believer in learning from other people's experiences, and I have watched some videos on YouTube about other tiny house dwellers who have moved their tiny houses and have had some experiences that some things go wrong that I have taken to heart. So one of the things that I really wanted when I chose my mover was I wanted a professional. I wanted somebody who, this is what they do. They move tiny houses, they move great big RVs, they move boats, things like that. I didn't want to hire somebody who could do it and had done a bit of it, but this wasn't their primary business line. Because I want to be sure that whoever I'm choosing, I can trust implicitly. So that was the number one thing that was a priority for me. Number one, I wanted to choose a professional mover. Number two, I wanted to get a referral. So I contacted my builder, Teacup Tiny Homes. I also contacted a couple other tiny house builders here in Alberta to get recommendations from them. The person who moved my house here for Teacup is no longer in the business, so I couldn't use him again. I would have, he was great. So I wanted to get some referrals so that I could start with a level of confidence that these were people that other professionals would recommend. So the first mover that I talked to was actually the fellow that my builder recommended. And one of the things that I noticed was he wasn't very responsive. It was hard to get a hold of, didn't seem all that interested in moving my tiny house. I couldn't get through to him, I couldn't get a response. And it's my philosophy and my belief that if whoever you're about to hire doesn't seem interested, then you should listen to that, because that is a red flag that says this is not going to be the person for you. I'm sure he's that company, this person is very good at what they do, obviously, because my builder trusts them. But they were not interested in taking on my job, and so therefore that was going to be a no-go. I did get a quote from them, but that was going to be a no-go. I then talked to another mover that another builder recommended, and again, they were a bigger organization, and it seemed hard to get anybody to respond to me. And then the mover that I chose, I actually found on Facebook because they were recommended to me by some people that I knew. And then I looked them up on Facebook. I saw a lot of videos of them moving tiny houses and RVs and things like that. There was a lot of recommendations from people that they had moved and things like that. I actually did talk to a couple of people who they had moved, if that makes sense. And so I reached out to those clients to ask them what their experiences were. Anyways, I ended up with A&N Transport, and Andrew Southam is the owner, and I ended up choosing them. And the reasons I chose them were, first of all, they're very highly recommended. Secondly, they're professionals. This is what they do. They move things constantly across Canada and primarily between Alberta and British Columbia. Spends a lot of time moving things to and from the island. and is very knowledgeable about how to book the ferry and things like that. So those were huge things. Also, they're very well insured. So when you choose a mover, you want to make sure that you're choosing somebody who's professional, because that professional will have insurance, proper insurance. They'll have the proper licenses, they'll have the proper insurance. So if something goes wrong on your move, it's insured. Keep in mind that your regular homeowner's insurance is likely not going to cover you while you're in transit. My homeowner's insurance covers only the contents inside my house during the move. It does not cover the house during the move. The mover, their insurance covers the house during the move. And so that's really important. You really want to keep that in mind and make sure that you have, make sure that you choose a mover that has the proper insurance, that has the proper licensing. Something else to keep in mind is that not every mover will have the proper vehicle for your trailer. I have a gooseneck trailer, and a gooseneck and a fifth wheel apparently are different hitches. I did not know that. I assumed that they were the same thing, just a different name. So it's important to make sure that your mover has the proper truck to move your specific trailer, which leads me to my next point is have the mover that you're going to be using come and see your trailer. So therefore, don't choose a mover that is so far away that they can't see the trailer before the day that they pull up to your spot to hitch up and move it out. Have them come and see your trailer ahead of time. Make sure that they're looking at the hitch. Make sure that they're just checking it out so they know exactly what they're moving and they know exactly what to quote you. And I think also it gives you the opportunity to meet these people face to face and see if you have a connection, because I think you can tell a lot. Your spidey senses will tell you a lot when you meet somebody in person. You have a conversation, and so when Andrew came, he and his wife came to see the house, and we were in the shed looking at the hitch and looking under the trailer and all of those things. I got a really good feel for them, and it helped me make my decision to choose them to move my tiny house, because I had a really good impression of them. I liked the questions that they asked. They really seemed to know what they were doing, and I really liked them in person. But he has two different trucks depending on what he's pulling, and so it was really important for him to come and see which truck he would be using so that when he came to pick up the house, he was prepared. So again, I think it's important as part of your process for choosing a builder, for choosing a mover. If I'm saying builder and I mean mover, just ignore that. So I think it's really important in part of your process for choosing a mover that you meet them in person and that they come and see your tiny house in person prior to the day of the move. So when Andrew came to see the house, we were able to also look at the tires. And one of my concerns, because the videos that I had watched, both of these people had issues with the tires of their house when they were moving. And so I was a little concerned about that. Would there be a problem with the tires? Did I need to buy new tires or something like that? And he was able to tell me, based on his expert opinion, that the tires are in great shape because the tires are off the trailer. So the trailer hasn't been sitting with any weight on the tires these last 3 years. That's number one. Number two, the tires have been underneath the trailer on plywood, so off of the gravel and behind the skirting. So they've not been exposed to the elements in the sun, and so they've been protected this whole time. Two things that really make a big difference. And so in his opinion, the tires are going to be fine prior to him, the mover, Andrew, coming to hook up to the house and pull it. Obviously the tires will be on and the house will be on its tires, but what the mover will do, what Andrew's going to do, is he'll be tightening those lug nuts. He will be checking the air pressure, inflating the tires to the proper air pressure. He will also be checking the electrical on the trailer to make sure that the lights are all working and that the brakes are all working. And those are really important things. And when you hire somebody who's not a professional, who maybe doesn't have as much experience as somebody who is a professional, you don't know how well they'll be doing this stuff. You don't know how much they know about these things, given the conditions that the house will be going through. And I did not want to have to worry about that. So when I chose my mover, I wanted to be sure to choose somebody who I could trust their opinion when it came to things like that, and that I knew would be checking everything out, nose to tail, before we ever pull out of this spot, so that it was going to be 100% roadworthy before we took off. So I got 3 quotes from 3 different movers to move the tiny house. And the mover that I chose was not the cheapest of the 3 quotes. Because I always, and have from watching other people's experiences, am very wary of the cheap quote, because you often get what you pay for. Now, I'm not saying you have to pay more, that's necessarily better, but when you get a quote for $4,000 to move the tiny house, and we're talking 15 hours between here and Vancouver Island for a regular car to drive, that seems really low, especially since the other 2 quotes were roughly the same price. So automatically I was concerned about that. I was a little suspicious that there was a lot of things that weren't included in the quote, and it wasn't very detailed. So another piece of advice here is the quote that you get, make sure it's very detailed. Make sure that the specs of the house that are on there are accurate to your house. Make sure that you know what's included and what's additional. The quote that I have includes the checking everything, getting everything ready, hooking up, moving it over 2 days, and delivering it and getting it on its jacks. It doesn't include the wide load permit. It doesn't include taxes. That's always extra. It doesn't include the cost for the ferry ride over. Those are all going to be extras. And that's fine. I know that. And the reason he can't tell me what the price of the reason the price of the ferry is extra is because until he books the ferry, he won't know exactly what that price is. And the same with the permits, though sometimes the prices change. So I have a good idea of what those things will cost. I have budgeted for that, but those are additionals to the quote that he gave me. He also was very clear on what my responsibility was. So when he comes on that morning to hook up and pull the house, the tires have to be on it. Everything has to be ready to go. The steps need to be pulled away. It needs to be ready to go. The lights, the outside light needs to be off, and everything ready to go. Now, he's happy to do anything when he comes, right? If those things aren't done, he'll do them, but he'll charge you for them. So my advice is to do as much as you can do so that you don't have to pay somebody else to do it. So the weekend before the move, we'll be doing all of that stuff. So all that Andrew has to do when he comes is back up, hook on, do the checks, and then off we go. So, you want your quote to be detailed. You want your quote to you want to know what the quote includes and what it doesn't, and you want to know what your responsibilities are so that there aren't extra charges, because time is money. These people are professionals. They get paid to do something, and if they've given you a quote and been very clear on their expectations for it, and you understand that, then anything that slows things down is obviously going to cost extra. He was telling me about a tiny house he was moving, and it was very wet and very rainy, and the house just got stuck in the mud, and they had to dig it out and figure out a way to get it out of the mud. That is unforeseen, right? If there's been a huge rain and you're on a rural property, that was unanticipated, and that was extra. It took them 9 hours to get that trailer, to get that house out and off on the road to its new spot. That's 9 hours of time you're going to have to pay for. So be prepared for emergencies and unexpected events, but try and be as prepared as possible so that the stuff you can control, the stuff you do know, you've taken care of. So that will help you minimize costs and be ready to go. Ooh, there's thunder. There's thunder happening. Poor Soph. There are other ways that you can move your tiny house other than just contacting movers directly. There is this company or system called UShip, and one of the tiny house channels that I follow, that's what she used. And basically what you do is you put on there that you have, in my case, a 9.5 by 37 foot tiny house, gooseneck, and estimate the weight, and it basically gets bid on by people, companies on there, and then you choose which quote you're going to go for, and that's the company that then comes and picks up your house and moves it. Now, she had some really bad experiences with with that system, and it's not the UShip per se, it's because they're just basically the broker. I think that's the best way to describe it. And so there's different companies that use this system to bid on these jobs. And it sounds like a good idea, and you can get some good quotes, I guess. But my concern with something like that is that you are hiring somebody blind, not necessarily somebody that you can get referrals for, and that can come and see your house and you can meet ahead of time. It seemed like the vehicles that came to pull the house were not the right vehicles for the house, for the weight and the size and things like that, and it just was one thing after another. I think sometimes what happens is when things go wrong, they just go spectacularly wrong, and it's one thing after another, and it's just a string of bad luck. I'm not saying that she didn't do her due diligence. This just didn't work out for her. But it definitely turned me off using that service because I wanted to avoid anything that could potentially turn out like that. So I wanted to choose a mover in a way that I could speak to clients of theirs to get their feedback on using them. And that were local, that I could meet in person, who could come and see the house in person well prior to the move. In fact, my mover is on the island a fair amount, and the next time they're up that side of the island, they're going to go by my new parking spot and have a good look at it. I have been able to send them pictures and everything like that, so they have a really good idea of what it all looks like. But the next time they're up that side of the island, they're just going to drive by it. They may stop and actually walk in and have a look, but it will give them a really good idea of what it looks like. In particular, the driveway in, which has been widened, so it's going to be good. I was able to send them pictures and some video, which I think is really useful. It's, I guess, buyer beware, and I'm a risk taker, I guess you could say, in that I am happy to challenge conventional wisdom when it comes to how you should live your life and all of those things, following the norms. But I am not a risk taker when it comes to things like this. I am very much a planner by nature and by profession, and so I like to minimize the unknowns as much as possible. And one of the things that I've done to do that is choose a mover that is very well recommended, who I really like, and have got a lot of comfort in knowing that this company is going to be taking very good care of my house. Another benefit of working with a professional is that they can give you a lot of advice as well about how to get ready for the move. And one of the things, the pieces of advice that I got from Andrew, his wife actually, was that everything that wasn't on the walls when my house was delivered here needs to come off of the walls for the move. And that is brilliant advice. So all the pictures, the TV, the little electric fireplace, blinds come down. Anything that wasn't on the walls, other than the plate rack shelf that I have installed in the kitchen, because that's screwed in, but everything will come off of that. And I think that that is really good advice, because your blinds will probably be okay, but likely they're going to slide down and be swinging around, and pictures are going to come off the walls. The TV definitely needs to come off the wall. Everything that wasn't on the walls to start is going to come off and get wrapped up and be on the floor with everything else. All of the heavy stuff that you're packing up, because I'm taking everything out of the cupboards in the kitchen and in all of the storage cupboards. Everything's coming off out and being put into boxes and bins on the floor. It doesn't have to be packed super well, because it's not going to be picked up and moved out of the house. It's staying in the house, but everything's going to be on the floor. Low center of gravity. Everything that's in the loft. Right now I've got the air conditioner up there and my shredder for work. Everything's coming out of the loft and onto the floor. And that is so that everything's low center of gravity. But one of the bits of advice was that put the heavy stuff over the wheel wells. Now, I have a triple axle trailer, so the wheel wells start just after the front door and go to the desk, just so the fridge area. So all of the kitchen area and half of this living room area is over the wheel wells. That's where you want the majority of your weight. That's why the kitchen is built there, because it's heavy because of the cupboards. Because that will be the most stable when moving the house, is to have the weight over the wheel wells. That's what's built to take the weight. So the bins, everything that I'm taking out of the kitchen is going to stay in the kitchen between the stove and the fridge in bins. Ooh, thunder. I don't know if you could hear that. That was a big thunderclap. Anyways, it will be there, and that's because that's over the wheel wells, and that's optimal place to have the weight. But your mover knows these things, and your mover can give you all of this advice, because this is all they do. So he's going to be reminding me and checking that I've strapped the fridge in. I won't forget that. And the stove in, and all of those things, so that things don't go flying around. And as we're moving, whenever we stop to check things, I'll be looking through the windows to make sure everything is still okay. I won't be able to get in because the awning will be flipped down over the door. So I really need to make sure everything's in here is packed in nice, wrapped really well, and so things aren't going to be flying around and sliding around. Because even though he's going to be very, very careful going down the highway, he's not going to be going super fast, you're still pulling something really big, and every bump and everything that you go over is going to bounce things around in here. So you really want everything that's up high on the floor and sort of Jenga'd in, so that it doesn't slide around. And I'm going to be laying tarps down and old blankets down on the floor, and setting the boxes and stuff on that so they don't slide around and scratch up the floor. But that was really good advice. You know, it sort of made clear to me, okay, that I get that. I can visualize that. If it wasn't on the wall when it was delivered, it comes off the wall for the move, and then gets put back in after. I don't think I need to empty the storage steps. I'll be going through there and getting rid of stuff. I won't be emptying the stuff that's under the bed, because the bed lifts up, because there's nothing really heavy in there. Suitcase, winter bedding and winter clothes and things like that. I'm not taking this stuff out of my closet. However, I'll be pulling all the hangers off and laying everything on the floor of the closet, because I don't want the weight on that rod as the house is moving, shifting, which could potentially loosen it, the brackets. So take the weight off the rod, lay it on the floor. That will also help keep the little drawer units from opening. And then in front of the mirror doors, between that and the bed, there's about a 2-foot space, and I will put some bins in front of there, light stuff just to make sure that the doors don't sort of push open or anything like that. I am in the process of clearing out my fridge and freezer, eating as much food as I can of what's in the house, so my recipes for the next few weeks could be interesting. But it's kind of a fun series, like use up what's in the fridge. What can we make from what's in the fridge? In particular, the fridge and freezer I really want to clear out. So after all that, after telling you who I chose, what's it going to cost me to move the tiny house? Well, when my first quote that I got from them was for a move before the end of August. Between Calgary and Vancouver Island, you go along Highway 1, which is the #1 highway that goes all across Canada. And there has been construction between Revelstoke and Golden, BC, that has closed that highway for periods of time. It was closed for a long time, but this year they actually had it open until the end of August, and then it's going to be closed again, which means that I will now have to take Highway 93 through Radium, and so that's going to add a few hours to the trip. And it means I really don't like the highway up to Radium. It's not a very nice highway. But so the original quote was $6,300 to move the tiny house. Canadian. Remember, these are Canadian dollars. Now that we are not going to be able to move by the end of August, we will be moving mid-September. We now have to take that Highway 93, and so that is added an extra $450 to the trip, just kilometer-wise. It's going to cost $6,750 to move the tiny house. This is plus the cost for the ferry, plus the wide load permit, and plus tax, Canadian dollars. So not cheap. I kind of guessed that it would be 6,000 or 7,000. I was hoping it'd be 4 or 5, but there's just no way. It is a long distance. Keep in mind that that's a long distance between Calgary and Vancouver Island. 15 hours if you were to drive it in a car. It is going to be over 2 days. That is what it is. That's the cost of it. There have been some other expenses, and I will do a breakdown of all of the expenses when this is all said and done. You know what? It's a mover that I trust. I'm feeling really good about it, and I always trust my instincts when I am doing something like this, and my instincts tell me that this was the right choice. Now, when it's all said and done, I will give you an absolutely honest assessment of how it all went. I will tell you all of the things that went right, all of the things that didn't, the learnings that I had. Hopefully we can pick it up on the 21st. We can get home on the 22nd, and then I can start getting everything settled and back to normal when we get there. You cannot be naive and think that nothing is going to go wrong. Something will happen, but I'm ready for it. I will have done my due diligence and in being prepared for the things that I can anticipate. And the things that you don't anticipate, by definition, are surprises and almost inevitable that something will happen. But like I said to Keaton today when we were having breakfast, I'm like Bilbo when he goes on his adventure. If you've ever read The Hobbit, you'll know what I'm talking about. And so that's how I choose to look at this. The thing about adventures is that you have hardships that you overcome, challenges that you face, and then afterwards it makes a great story, or in this case, a great future video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. It doesn't cost you anything, and it really helps the channel grow, and it helps YouTube know that the content is of value and will therefore recommend it to somebody else. So I really appreciate it if you would click that subscribe button, check off that bell notification, because that lets you know every time that I upload a video, which is every Sunday for tiny house related video, intentional living related video, and on Wednesdays I usually do a cooking video, though I will admit that between now and the move, Wednesday videos might be a little tough because there's lots going on at work to get ready to go. There's lots going on personally to get ready to go. And if anything has to sort of get pushed back, it might be the recipe videos. We'll see. I still will try to post those for you. Anyways, guys, I love you. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're staying safe. Remember, in a world where you can be anything, be kind. And I will see you next Sunday. So I am going through all my paperwork here, getting rid of all this stuff. I'm hoping to get down to one bin. I have 2 bins with all really old paperwork. So I'm going to get rid of it, get it shredded, so I don't have to take it all with me.